Gamification for enhanced student learning. What exactly is a game? According to Bernard Suits in his 1978 book on the nature of playing a game can be described as the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. A game can be operationalized by the following key features: goals, rules, feedback, voluntary participation, and ideally, fun and enjoyment. What makes games special or compelling? Although games contain many distinguishing features, there are at least 5 primary elements that seem to be represented in games that are truly considered high value. For example, the first element, immersion, occurs when a well-designed game captures the attention of players to the point where they become entirely immersed in the present. This sustained engagement and attention, combined with other elements discussed later, creates a state commonly known as flow. In the flow state, the player loses the sense of self in the experience of the game. Identity. Identity within the realm of a game is argued by some theorists to be essentially the bedrock of an effective game. It's the way that identity can be molded and customized based on the particular character or ego that a player desires to manifest. Essentially, players experience an embodied, unique sense of self within the context of the game. This is often accomplished by the use of avatars or game-specific characters, which convey the player's presence, location, decisions, and actions to others. The third element is sort of a combination of agency and impact, and these two components come together in a way to really concretize identity within the game. Essentially, identity can be established by cultivating a player's sense of agency and impact. Agency can be thought of as being an internal locus of control, a strong conviction that the source of influence over the game lies within oneself. Impact subsequently represents the degree to which one's own decisions and actions have a measurable effect on other variables and players throughout the course of the game. The fourth major element of a game is belonging. A good game will also provide a strong sense of belonging for the player. This essentially helps fulfill the innate human need to belong to a community in the form of a team or other social group within the gaming world. The last element worth mentioning for now is maintaining a balance between the level of difficulty or complexity in the game with the player's level of skill and experience. A well-designed game essentially adheres to Vygotsky's notion of scaffolding, where the level of challenge experienced early in the game is relatively low. This can be done by keeping options for decisions and behaviors relatively limited initially. Once players get a feel for the game, however, and develop a personal strategy or start progressing, the challenges and complexity should scale accordingly. Researchers essentially refer to this balance between challenge and the player's level of skill or power as the Goldilocks zone, where the level of stress and anxiety is not too low, not too high, but just right. If there's too little stress, players become bored and disengaged. With too much stress, players become quickly overwhelmed and/or frustrated, leading them to shut down. An optimal level of challenge is something that promotes immersion and brings players into the flow state referenced earlier. Gamification, specifically, is the integration of game design and mechanics in the delivery of educational content. Although it sounds relatively straightforward, it actually can be quite challenging, especially considering that for gamification to be particularly effective, that is, to enhance the experience of students and also increase the rate and consistency of learning and skill acquisition, a game that is designed to deliver educational content should be designed effectively. There are several advantages to using a gamified design, such as being able to leverage positive reinforcement by rewarding learning and academic progression, cultivating a sense of intrinsic motivation to learn and positive attitude towards education, helping students reframe their understanding of what it means to be educated and dedicated to learning, and being able to design educational delivery based on modern developmental and educational theories. Essentially, games provide an accessible medium for applying evidence-based principles of learning and academic performance, such as by using scaffolding to allow each student to learn and progress at a pace commensurate with their predilection. Types of educational games. Given the field is still in a stage of relative infancy, there doesn't yet appear to be a clear taxonomy for categorizing educational games. However, based on my review of the literature, I found it helpful to think of these games as falling into one of at least three categories. Content-oriented games, which are perhaps the most common, tend to prioritize educational content, but at the expense of other game-related elements. Although content-oriented games are relatively straightforward to develop and are therefore the most common type of educational game on the market, their general lack of strong game mechanics and design really result in an unengaging and superficial experience for players. With content-oriented games, there's no clear relationship between the educational content being delivered and game progression. A player might think, gee, why do I need to solve the square root of pi in order to shoot this alien spaceship? The juxtaposition between what the player is learning and what is occurring in the game world just doesn't make sense. The reward mechanics in content-oriented games also tend to be superficial, focusing solely on achievement and progression markers, e.g. points, badges, levels, leaderboard rankings. Although this reward system is great for short-term motivation, in the long term it seems to undermine intrinsic motivation, which is actually the type of motivation that tends to be a key factor for long-term learning. In short, content-oriented games are easier and less expensive to produce. When searching for educational games, there is certain to be more content-oriented games on the market compared to the other games that I'm about to mention. However, this type of game tends to produce less long-term engagement for students. Serious games. Serious games are those games tailored primarily towards professional training and teaching in more advanced contexts, e.g. computer programming, virtual design. Serious games have a very specific goal in mind, with the long-term outcome of helping players develop a very narrow set of skills or understand a niche body of knowledge. With serious games, fun and enjoyment are essentially secondary objectives. Examples of serious games include the Kriegspiel chess variation used by the Prussians, or America's Army, which continues to be used for officers learning military tactics. Some applications beyond training for a specific skill or application have been done in the realm of serious games, such as that produced by Noah Falstein, who had actually worked at a variety of mainstream game development companies, who developed a serious game to teach teenagers how cancer treatment works. Essentially, this game involved simulating a fictional environment at the microscopic level, i.e., nanorobots in the bloodstream fighting cancer cells. This game was demonstrated to actually enhance patient chemotherapy adherence. The last category is not really considered official nomenclature. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only person who actually came up with the name of this final category. But regardless, I think the term itself is a decent one for describing what kind of games these are. And that term is educationally repurposed games. Essentially take an ordinary retail game and use it as a medium for learning, applying, and discussing educational principles and techniques. Even though these games are originally designed mainly for fun and perhaps escapism, students who play these games do so with the intent of concretizing academic lessons, principles, or skills. For example, using Angry Birds to discuss the principles of velocity, or Minecraft for designing geometric structures. Although the process of designing and applying educational repurposed games is less straightforward than content-oriented or maybe serious games as well, it can result in more meaningful learning and long-term engagement for students.
So now let's talk about gamification in action. When I think of gamification, I think of fun. How can we transform evidence-based interventions or classroom behavior management into fun activities that kids will want to do more and have greater buy-in? I gamified a number of activities when I worked as a kindergarten para. One common evidence-based classroom management strategy is a token economy. Students earn points or classroom dollars when they show the appropriate behavior, and they trade the points in for small items like stickers or pencils at a classroom store. I gamified our class's token economy by transforming it into transition heroes. The class I had at the time really struggled with self-control during transitions like coming in from recess, lining up for lunch, or changing stations in literacy groups. Before starting, I asked each student, if you were playing a game and could play as any character, who would it be? I found stock images of each character and essentially photoshopped each student's image onto their favorite character. Then I printed the images, turned them into magnets, and created a scoreboard. Each time a student showed appropriate transition behavior, I put their magnet on the scoreboard. At the end of the day, students whose pictures were left on the board got Classroom Dojo points that could be used at the classroom store. The students loved to see themselves as their favorite character. Anytime their magnet went on the board, I usually made a comment like, "Wow, Wonder Woman Mermaid Princess is on fire today." Here is an example of an SEL intervention that I gamified. In our classroom, we had a student who was afraid to sit with other students on the carpet, eat his lunch, or play with others at recess. The teacher and I agreed that we needed to implement some kind of incentive system to help this kiddo acclimate to school. But he didn't respond to any of the typical rewards like stickers that other students liked. One thing we did know was that this kid loved Super Mario Brothers. So I printed out and laminated a Mario game scene, as well as various Mario characters and items. I attached them with Velcro to allow movement. The teacher and I wrote out small tasks we wanted the student to do, and I transformed them into the rules of his very own Mario game. If he completed one of the items on his task sheet, he got to move Mario one step closer to Bowser. When he defeated Bowser, completing all the tasks, he earned a Mario figure and moved to the next level, i.e. tasks that continued his progress with basic school behaviors. Not only did he love it, but the class loved learning about his game. He became more comfortable with other students, and we eventually retired his game by having a class party. The most important thing in gamification is to know your players. What are their interests? What are their needs? You may design a super fun Minecraft type intervention, but if your students hate Minecraft or have never been exposed to it, you've wasted a lot of creative energy. In addition, students might love your game, but if it doesn't meet their learning needs, its use has limited academic value. So now I will present you all with a case study. Dorian is a student at my practicum site. As you listen to his story, think about how you could gamify school-based activities for him.
Has gotten the dream of a lifetime at 7 years old, and the entire school turned out to cheer Dorian Hernandez on as he heads to Florida to meet Tom Brady. And our Kennedy Cook joins us now from Timig Elementary School in Kennedy. Dorian has already beat the odds.
Michelle, the crowds roared, the cheerleaders cheered, and the faculty, staff, and students at Timig Elementary screamed Dorian's name as he prepared for his journey to Tampa Bay. Now, Dorian has a genetic disorder that affects his central nervous system, but at just 7 years old, he's already outlived his doctor's life expectancy. And now Dorian will get that all-star treatment to go and meet some all-stars, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Battling his condition has been a tough ride for young Dorian. But today, Dorian and his immediate family are going on a much more pleasant ride thanks to the Rocky Mountain chapter of Dream on 3, a nonprofit that takes kids and their families to meet professional athletes.
It was so overwhelming, but overwhelming with happiness and gratitude and just amazement that everybody came out here for him.
So Dorian and his family will fly to Tampa tomorrow. They'll spend one day at the beach. They get to watch the Bucs practice and then attend the Bucs-Rams game Sunday afternoon.
That's great.
I know, I'm
Dorian,
so
I hope you
excited for
enjoy that.
him.
That is so wonderful.
Also want to give a real quick shout out and welcome aboard to a very special guest traveling with us today. Dorian is an amazing 7-year-old from Henderson, Colorado who lives with leukodystrophy. Thanks to Dream on 3 Rocky Mountains, a nonprofit organization that makes sports dreams come true, Dorian is being given the opportunity to live out his dream this week. Dorian loves football, and his dream is to watch his favorite player, Tom Brady, play in a football game. We're very happy to be flying Dorian and his family to Tampa today to help make this dream come true.
Dorian was born. It was a normal
birth, and then around the time that he was starting to crawl, and I could just tell that there was just something not right. He would crawl, he would just like face plant, talk to the pediatrician. She referred us to a neurologist, and then they did the first MRI on his brain, and they could tell that his cerebellum is small and it's actually slowly shrinking. There's something in the genes, but the technology just isn't there yet. We just can't find it. So I kind of had to just leave it at that and just, you know, because having a name to it isn't going to change anything. So Dorian is the biggest Tom Brady fan. I don't know where it came from, to be honest, but he just has always liked to watch him, you know, whatever we can. And then my parents, when there was a game on, they would record it, and then he would watch it over and over again. When we went to the actual practice, we were on the sidelines, and Tom Brady was there. And not only was he there, but he came and took time to have conversations with the kids and myself. He played catch with the boys, and it just felt so magical. It really was magical.
Wanna throw it? Yes! Good job. Good throw.
Earlier this month, the Dream on 3 charity held their annual fundraiser. All 4 of the Colorado recipients from the previous year, including Dorian, were the star guests. Their pictures were offered to guests who had the kids sign autographs. Dorian's fine motor skills are limited. In the months leading up to the gala, the school's occupational therapist determined his primary goal at school would be writing his name. Knowing Dorian's unique interests and needs, how would you gamify teaching him to write his name?
Okay. Oh, ooh. I don't want to spill. Russell Wilson is a little bit hurt, but he's getting better. You want me to sit down? Okay. Yeah! Yes! Touchdown, Dorian!
And that's it for our intro to gamification.